So please welcome back to the show, Seph Dietlan. Welcome, Seph.
Thank you. It's
And this
always good to
time,
be here. Yeah,
but this time you're not coming from Sedona. So I'm looking at you in a different place. You're coming from Orange County.
right.
Yeah. So, you know, I look at you and, connecting with you between the last episode that we interviewed or that we recorded. And I look at my growth. I look at what you've done. I look at the retreats you've created out of just inspiration and what you were led to with the angels. And it makes me realize that when you do listen and you do follow the path that brings you the most joy, that you're led to what your soul's mission. And what you do for me is, and the friendship that we've created in the last few months since our first meeting,
Hmm.
is trusting that and knowing and having that belief that we are guided. And even though you have this gift of channeling the angels and have tapped into that, I know that, we all have these gifts, right? Like you've given me the the confirmation that we all have everything that we need. It's
Yeah,
nothing is outside of us. So let's talk about why don't we, since this is a part two, why don't we bring to what you've been doing since we last? Because I feel like our first interview was more, this is who you are, you know, all the magic that you do with the angels and, all the things that led you to that moment. And now I want people to know what you do now as living in that way.
yeah. That's really good, actually. And first of all, the intention of sharing that is to create a calibration point so that anyone who's listening to this is tapped into that level of magic too, because this is about the magic. And what I would share with you really has to do with up leveling the connectivity to that magic and really seeing it as real. Because I believe between the last time we spoke and this time, I, through guidance, assembled a retreat. It isn't really a retreat as much as it is an activation in Sedona. And when I say that I channeled it or that I co created it, it came to me via that guidance. And everything was right on. In fact, every single one of the participants that were there, they actually didn't find it through a web page or a sales channel. They all found it through frequency, which was magical in and of itself. In these activations, they have a buffet of practitioners who come in. And I had received this through a dream prior, where I had seen myself doing these retreats. And I was taken right away to what appeared to be a hotel conference space, just for symbolism. And in each of the rooms were different amazing practitioners who offered a certain calibration. And with the angels and this collaboration or this collaboration with these other practitioners, there was this great, big, immense portal of magic that would open up. And I saw it as foretelling. And within months, I was co creating this retreat purely through an act of receptivity and synchronicity. There isn't any effort that I put into it. The right people that were there to serve had come in. The participants came in. It was magical. So high was the calibration, the love that these people calibrated with inside themselves and with each other. They left the retreat or this experience. One of them went back home and got a clear cancer scan. One of them went back home and found a way to open up the business that they wanted to open up. But each of them had a huge leap forward from having calibrated with that. And so the angels guided me to know that this was a formula. This was a concept of what we're supposed to do here, which is to create these unity projects in which we're all assembled to serve. And it just so happened that a few months later, which was just a couple weeks ago, I took some of the same people from this group. And again, this all fell into place, which was to go and do an activation on the big island of Hawaii, which has a huge activation portal, and it's connected to Lemuria and the essence of Lemuria, or the frequency of Lemuria. And again, the same thing occurred. Everyone that went there had a profound experience, and that's still an understatement. We're almost 2 or 3 weeks out, and people are still reaching out to me. They're crying tears of joy from these immense breakthroughs that they're having. And I think one of the reasons why this is important is because we're moving into a new stage of co-creativity with Source. And I want anyone listening to this to know that the old laborious and effortful ways that we used to create, they're no longer valid. In fact, that whole paradigm has collapsed. And we're in not only this transitional phase, which you can say is the arrival of the new earth, if you want to use that, old earth, new earth, tastes great, less filling earth, whatever. And right. So we're actually in it, but we're not in it in a way where we sense it coming. We're in it where we see it now. And we're in these most amazing spaces with this. Now, interestingly enough, before I left for the retreat, I took my car in for service and discovered that I had an expensive repair. And I got the guidance, of course, to wait until I came back from the trip. And when I got back from the trip, I happened to meet in the uh, the parking garage of the building I live in a mechanic for my particular brand who was able to take care of the repair for a fraction of the cost. And I got a new friend out of the deal. But not only that, but the mechanic wanted to hear about the miracles because I told him that he was a part of the miracles and he wanted to hear more. He's like, well, this is great. And to me, that was knowing that this journey that we're all taking of expanding into co-creation with Source is starting to reach some of the places that we least expect it to, or that we normally would expect it not to, because we think we're in our little bubble of spirituality or of consciousness, and that there are so many people outside of it. But that is a wonderful way to know that this person was open to it. But the other thing is, it was a reminder how everything that we need, we're always going to encounter it. Had I gone down to the garage a second earlier or a second later, I would not have intersected that person. So that meeting was meant to happen, and is really a concrete demonstration of the paradigm of co-creation that we're in right now.
Yeah. What was going through my mind, even from, I mean, what we had our interview, a few months ago, my mind is, and what you're saying to me is so expanded in what you're in the, and I relate to that because I look at my life, and when you talk about, living in this place where the old version of, the law of attraction, or the coaches, trying to, get their number, create these courses, that doesn't resonate. I don't even live in that frequency. And now when I understand, like when you're talking about the magic and the miracles, and it's how I really speak that all the time because I live in the magic of every step that I take. And when you explain the frequency and how I we can live in the, it's all happening right now. So it's, living in that frequency. It's our choice to be that. And I love when you explain how you go to these retreats And everyone, it's all like, because all last year I had a retreat every other month. And I see it as a, like like going up the ladder, right? Like every retreat was the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to January, had the last retreat I had. And now I'm at a place where and when we were speaking, I'm like, I'm ready to go to the next step. And I know that I'm just following my passion, my joy, the inspiration that comes. Maybe it's the angels that are speaking to me like they do you, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
I just keep moving in that way. And I see that every day, like that 1 second, I could have been in that garage and I wouldn't have met the guy, but I know everything is being given to me at the exact time. And it's the taking that, it's not the pressure, but it's like that feeling that we used to have in the, I mean, I would say years, months ago, where people were so, it was like forced. Now it's like that. Oh, let us let it come, right? Do you
Right.
see that?
Absolutely. And one of the things that actually makes that happen is creating enough white space in your day because the old effortful paradigm is gone. It's not effort, drive, or the amount of quote work that you put into anything that actually going to create it because we're co-creating it with the quantum field.
Hmm.
Which is why, as you mentioned, yeah, we can teach courses and that's great. The real game changer is calibration. When I do one on one work or when I teach my course about dialoguing with the angels, those are all calibrations. They are intended to broadcast a frequency, and I like to call it an ultraviolet frequency because it's in a high vibrational field, like ultraviolet light. But there's something in its broadcast that actually does all of the transformation and it broadcasts the codes where whomever is participating in a calibration event or an activation event or an activation course or a course with an activation or whatever it is that we do, what happens in your retreats or in these retreats, we call them those, but these activation events is that there's a calibration. There's a synergy that comes together where we're connecting to the quantum field and then we're broadcasting those codes and we're all receiving them. And that's where the shift is truly happening. It's not happening through comprehending content like we did in algebra. And I still haven't used my algebra, by the way. But anyway,
Yeah,
right?
right. When I hear my girls, just being a mom and watching them going, "Oh, you'll never," like, what a waste. But
Yeah,
we go a little bit back because when you talk about calibration and activation, can you explain the difference?
right. So an activation is where we identify a part inside of us that is already that. So the powerful co-creator is in each of us. And when we activate that, we bring it online. Okay. So
Okay.
it's sort of like a good example of that is you buy a phone that already has apps on it and you actually activate them and make your own account or put your own login
Okay.
and then you can use it for yourself. But inside of us is already a being that is capable of doing the receptivity and to actually co-creating, and it's inside of each of us. It's in our blueprint, it's already installed. And what happens when we do this activation is we're just bringing it online, and we're
Hmm.
doing it through the calibration because it hits at a certain frequency and it hits at one that resonates with that part inside that has the capacity to do it. So it's opened up via light, or you could say light language. You could say transmission. But interestingly enough, that part of us that's activated is activated through a calibration. So there is a high frequency broadcast, which then ends up reaching the piece inside of us that is already designed to do all of that, and it brings it online.
Okay.
No learning needed. It just comes online.
It just like you turn your app on and it's like there it is. It's always
Yeah.
been there.
Yeah. I remember when I first started communicating with the angels, I used to hang out with a buddy of mine. And one day we were hanging out, and I'm used to seeing like interesting miracles happen around me as I'm walking around or whatever. And I think we had like two or three of them happen or whatever. And I remember him saying, "Oh, I forgot. Every time I hang out with you, all these miracles start to happen." And then he's like, and then they happen to me. And that is to say, and I don't take credit for that, but I understand that it's a broadcast that comes in from a higher part. But all that is to say that the real way that we empower each other is by actually understanding that the powerful peace that is inside of each of us is the same and we all have it. And all we're doing is emitting an ultraviolet signal to ping it open.
Got it.
The effect in real time is that we go into this frequency. It brings that aspect online. That person is not learning something like we learn algebra. They're just in that energy frequency. And then after it comes online, they go from there, and the miracles that they're experiencing is next level. And of
Right.
course, interesting enough, everyone went back home, for example, from the Hawaii retreat, and they all saw Kona or Hawaii license plates or things like that to help them understand that they had leveled up. And and it was actually, believe it or not, a chain reaction of really cool miracles to bring these together. So when I did the Sedona activation, I had a friend reach out to me and let me know that she had a house that was listed and vacant and invited me to come and stay in Sedona for a month and a half. Like out of the blue, she just called me and said that. And the chain reaction of events created or co created that activation event in Sedona. And 2 years ago, I was guided by the angels to jump on a plane and go to the big island of Hawaii, where I met this network of people who ended up serving this group in this last Hawaii activation. And what's more, one of those things that I did was I had gone to a sound bath at the Kona Cloud Forest Sanctuary. And I looked up at the ceiling and I heard a message: you're going to be bringing people for a sound bath here to the Kona Cloud Forest Sanctuary in a retreat. And I was like, what? I'm doing retreats?
Oh,
And
wow.
I didn't know that I was doing it. So of course, a couple of weeks ago, I got to see that prophecy crystallize into reality
Wow.
as that was one of the events that we did, was a sound bath inside the cloud forest.
Amazing. So when you see these people, messaging you that all these miracles, the signs and the synchronicities after they've been to a retreat and had been activated, and is it explain because people are listening now and I can tell what they're thinking. Like, well, what are they doing to elevate their frequency? How are they getting activated? What is Seph doing with them at these retreats that they're having these up leveling in their vibration and are activating their apps in their
Yeah,
soul.
yeah, yeah. And what's interesting is even that part is magical. There's not a piece of this that isn't magical. And again, it is definitely a concretization of what we've stepped into as far as co-creation and how effortless it is. So that's so funny. I get to encounter people and I just know through the guidance where to place them on the agenda. So in the agenda is various events like drum circles, breathwork sessions, um, painting, art therapy, and the right ones for the right people always come in. And each practitioner that comes in is coming through to do an activation. And what I've been allowed to see is that this agreement that I have with the practitioners and they have with the participants, and all of them with each other, all of us with each other, creates this great big ball of high frequency energy that's waiting for everyone in that place on that date on the calendar.
Hmm.
And we know that time and space is an illusion, but this huge portal is waiting, and it is the intention and energy of each of those that participate, both practitioners and participants, that create this huge portal. And I have a couple of fun, magical examples. And of course, I'm hoping the audience can use this as a way of understanding how they could apply it to their realm as well. But for the Sedona retreat, I was working on a project with this guy who has a very special gift for being able to connect with people and understand what's going on and direct them with some very well received guidance. And I looked at him and I said, the angel said that you're supposed to do an event at my retreat. Are you up for it? He says, oh, yeah. I said, they said you know what you're supposed to do. He says, I do. And I said, okay, that's great. And I placed him on the agenda where he belonged. And it turned out that I was doing a podcast interview. So, with that particular activation, I made sure that the participants got to their destination, that they did what they were going to do. And afterward, I met up with them for dinner. And I was floored to hear how magical and powerful this session was. I don't even know what he did, but they all loved it so much and they loved him so much. And all I did was receive the guidance that he was supposed to be there and receive the feedback later that whatever he offered was exactly what they needed.
Wow.
Um, Another one was that I had seen that there was this second event of the first day, and I saw a visual image of people basically coloring or painting angels, and that it was a way for them to connect with their angels to activate, their ability to create, manifest, and be in that stream of magic. And I was wondering, well, how am I going to put this together? And almost at the last minute, a friend of mine surfaced and revealed to me that she had created these angel coloring books and that she takes people into meditation where they color the angels, and she takes them in a meditation where they connect with the angels. And I said, oh my gosh, would you do this for the people at my retreat? And it was the second event on the first day, but I didn't know she was coming until later. And when I did try to go figure out what that was going to look like or how I was going to put together, I immediately knew I was supposed to let go and let it come in the way that it was supposed to. And it did. And it was another one of the favorites of the activities that was offered. People really loved it. And their angels, the ones that they created, they were all so different. And in that particular one, they were reminded of how doing something like coloring, like when you're a child, really activates the belief in
Hmm.
magic inside of you and that childlike quality. And the third one that's just like this, and this is one of my, I don't know, it's my favorite, but this one is really, really, truly powerful. I have a friend who does light language and she has light language activations and she lives in Hawaii. And one time I had done an event in person. At the end, she asked if she could do some light language for people. And it takes an enormous amount of courage to do light language because you've been in its presence.
Hmm.
It's someone speaking in this language. It sounds like they're just making sounds in their mouth. And yet it's so powerful that it's like pelting you with energy. And it is so powerful. And so I said to her, I said, I want you to do an event at the Hawaii retreat. I want you to come in and do a light language activation. And she said, well, what am I going to do? I said, you'll know what to do when you do it. Now, normally, if you're curating an event, you vet everybody in a very logical way, right?
Right.
And there wasn't a doubt in my mind. I said to her, no, you're supposed to be there. She goes, I'd love to. I said, just come there and do what you feel guided to do. Afterward, I cannot tell you how much feedback came from people saying that that was one of their favorite activations or one of the most powerful ones, many of whom had stepped into light language themselves and were able to give themselves permission to do it because of her courage, which was one of the
Oh.
biggest things they took away from it. And then later, the practitioner comes up to me and says, oh my gosh, I didn't know that I had this in me. I said, I
Mm.
did. The angels did. And I asked her to do it literally on the guidance of that receptivity, which is the way that she ended up being there. And it wasn't even something that she had done before, but the angels already knew what she was capable of doing. But in addition to being a profound quantum leap for the people who participated in it, it was a profound quantum leap for her as well.
Mm.
And
Wow.
then this was held at the Cloud Forest Sanctuary. And interesting enough, Diane from the Cloud Forest, she had come to an event that I did in Southern California prior to that intuitive trip that I took to Hawaii. And I didn't know she owned the Cloud Forest. Talk
Oh,
about
wow.
magic, right?
Yeah.
So I was guided to go on a specific day. And Diane came out because she had come up to me at this event in Southern California and said, I have this place in Hawaii that I'd like. Is it on your agenda? I said, yes, I feel that it's coming soon. And we were going to connect, but it didn't happen in a forceful way. I ended up going to the cloud forest when I took that intuitive trip and I ran into her. And of course, then we hosted this event there. And she looked back at me and she said, you have no idea what your team is up to. I said, I can see it right
Oh,
now because it isn't just the participants that were affected, it was the practitioners as well.
yeah. That's amazing. I want to talk about the angels for a second and veer off here. I was making me think about, your magic and you connecting to the angels and the conversations we've had. You know, they talk through you and you say this is what they're saying. And what
Yeah.
has been since maybe the last 6 months, have you seen a more of a stronger connection? Have they changed in any way? Have you gotten to be more in-depth information? Like, because your frequency, what they say to you depend on where you're at with your frequency?
Yes and no. But I will say some things here that I know that are meant to be heard by whoever's listening to this. So definitely I have really seen an acceleration of whatever it is that they've promised or guided me to come into fruition. I've seen a huge acceleration of that. And I've also seen a huge deletion of the old way of doing things as a human. Now, interesting enough about frequency, because we're all doing our best and we're these powerful beings in these human bodies. And there's sometimes that the conditioning of the human body can actually have an interesting effect on us that might not necessarily be wanted, but necessary. And that means that as that old way of doing things through willpower, effort, manipulation, control, that whole linear and logical way of doing things, as it's coming offline, so too are we possibly feeling a bit stuck about how we're going to do this or that. And we may even be sitting in some spaces where we feel like certain things aren't in motion like we want them to. And they're not only not in motion like we like them to, we don't have the power in the old way to actually influence some momentum. But what's happening is as we sit in that space and as we allow ourselves to go through this equalization or this justification, and this, I think, is the real answer to your question: what sort of pivot and what sort of new experience has been in play? There has been this real guidance to accept everything the way that it is and actually surrender the resistance of thinking that it should be different, better, or more advanced along its path. And that's actually a very common pain point right now for many, many people, where on some level they realize that the old linear and effortful system is not available and is not working, and they're seeing what they see as a lack of momentum without the quote power, at least in the old way, to create that momentum. And because we're creative beings, that can take a toll on us. And then what we get to do is actually just get to accept everything the way that it is. And no, that's not easy.
Right.
And no one's here to say that it is. And if this is you in the audience, we see you, we hear you, we know you. And yes, we love you. Because the next thing that happens is in that place of stillness, in that place of surrender, that's when magic really actually begins to gain momentum and start creating things with wildly less amounts of effort and huge quantum exponential layers of momentum. And so it has an exponential effect that keeps doubling or 10xing or 10xing. But it's this sort of point where it's this death and resurrection phase that we're in right now, of actually letting go of the old paradigm and stepping into the new one, which is why the language that we're using, like calibration and activation and frequency and all of these other things, and understanding that it actually has a desired effect. Actually, we have the ears to hear it and the eyes to see it, because we're in that death and resurrection, so to speak, that dismantling and building up of a new reality that we live in that's based in co creation.
Right.
And the other thing is that I, in, I had to tell you, it's like more and more I can feel the effects of the hologram that we live in. And the way that I would say this is that we've known for a long time that what we live in is a projection of light and a projection of illusion, but it's so real to us. we knock on our table and it's our table, right?
Mm-hmm.
If something goes wrong with our car, we have to take money out of our wallet to pay for it, whatever it is, right? We have that which makes it seem so real. So it's like, well, when are we going to get to the point where I know what I live in is holographic or illusionary? When do I get to the point where I get to create at the level of being able to shift things through the illusion instead of course, through effort? And interesting enough, I got invited to a friend in Vegas has this very special healing bed called a Stargate. And I don't know why, but I felt this demand on me to jump in the car, drive to Vegas, and go do this. And interesting enough, I started to go down, and this dragon came to me, this angelic dragon. And we always wonder, what forms our angels have. And I know that it's a band of energy that can show up in any way. And it isn't always just winged beings, and it isn't not winged beings. It's all of the above. Well, this dragon came through who was full of love and actually revealed something different, something amazing about opening up power. And actually, when dragons start appearing to us, these angelic dragons, they start to show up because we're actually at the point of entering into the new paradigm. And I found this out. So the dragon told me, you're going to see me everywhere now. And I've never seen dragons, but I see them all the time, every day. But of course, what we live in is a hologram. Even when I left Vegas, the restaurant across the street from the gas station that I was filling up with was called Red Dragon.
Oh,
And
wow.
so these dragons started showing up. And then I started asking, like, well, how is this connected to the angelic realm? And I mean, I talked to angels. Isn't that enough? And of course, the dragon said, I can do things that the angels can do, but I can also kick butt when you need me to
Oh,
in
funny.
this world of form where sometimes love isn't what will make the change, but some brute force is needed. And he said, that's where I get to step in and, take care of business, if you know what I mean. And I said, okay, I know what you mean.
Oh my
Because,
gosh.
those of us who are light filled beings, we know what it's like to feel very often encumbered by those that aren't influenced by light, and they need a different kind of strength to actually um, insulate us from them or whatever desired effect they have on us. And as basically being allowed to know that this angelic dragon, that there are many of them, that he was there to protect me in a 3D way and protect me in a 5D way. And I don't usually use that kind of language, but it's the best way that I could say it, because in my human body, he could protect me in a way that you need protection on earth from
Mm-hmm.
brute force. And then also, he possessed the love. I felt overwhelmed with this sense of euphoric love when I met him. Well, a couple days after I get back, I get this very interesting draw to go into a cabinet where I have tons and tons of oracle decks. And I thought to myself, there's a message waiting for me in a specific deck that I have. And of course, I open it up, and the first thing it has is a dragon. It's an Archangel
Oh,
Metatron
wow.
deck, and it's got a dragon. And the card that was waiting there was the dragon card. And I don't even remember the dragon card being in there.
Wow.
So,
I love
interesting
that.
enough, I do believe that we have really truly seen a quantum leap in where we are in the ladder of ascension. And that's why we're seeing also this increase in what will flow to us through co creativity.
Right. I was just having a conversation today, like a couple hours ago, with my friend who says, all I do, I see dragons everywhere. And she showed me a picture of one that looked, she's like, I have to show you this cloud. And it was this dragon blowing smoke.
Mm,
It was a perfect dragon. And she's like, and now all I can do is see dragons.
they're
And so,
everywhere.
And
Yeah.
so you're telling me this. And then the other thing we were talking about is you just answered it, and I would have asked you this question, but you answered it anyway, is, when we see this world, there's some people that live in the world now that it's too early to like um live where I know where we're going, but they're trying to do it now. And it's just not there. We're not there yet, but they're trying to, let's not pay our bills. Let's not do this. We're going to live this way, but we're not there yet. How do you explain that?
Oh, and I mean, that's interesting because if we're not meant to pay something, then we wouldn't have the capacity for it. But the capacity that we may have to still function in the old system, that capacity is sent to us anyway. So it's already allocated or earmarked for that.
Mm,
So it isn't necessarily the desire to hold money for ourselves instead of paying the light bill. It is actually more like understanding that when the light bill comes, even if they've raised the rates, which we know they have, but even though,
yeah,
even when the light bill comes, that whatever comes in to pay it is already a blessing or a gift that will come through in whatever way. And interestingly enough, I do feel that many of us are experiencing what feels like a stiffer paradigm around money, and yet it shows up more easily, and yet you have a different relationship with it. And
hmm,
we're meant to actually kind of expand into that new relationship with it because soon it will be one of the many ways that we'll create what we're meant to create. But I do hear from the angels that we're meant to wait until we've already turned that feature on before
you
we
mean like
actually,
the app in our body?
yeah, exactly.
No, I'm gonna
Yeah.
have a whole
Yeah.
different vision of that.
Yeah. Well,
That's
I
a
mean,
great way.
yeah, another way of saying it is when you actually download a program, you get a program to upload the program. And there's so much already inside of us that is code. It really is code that is just being brought online. And the ascension is literally a gradual process of bringing online the divine being that we are into this reality, you know?
Right.
And by the
When you
way,
say code, explain, continue that, and then I'll go to something.
yeah, yeah, but and by the way, there are many out there who feel this sense that the reality that we live in is too mundane because of the expansion that they have experienced. And that's actually a partial symptom of this as well. They'll tell me things like, I used to go to clubs and I used to go dancing, or I used to go to the movies, or I used to go here, I used to go do this. And all of these things, they just don't intrigue me anymore. And now I don't know what to do because at this point, many of us aren't even drawing our enjoyment out of the external all the time, which is what we want anyway. And instead, we're drawing it from within. But now there is this gap in between where the events that show up on the external level match where we're at in our level of evolution. Now, interestingly speaking, there are new facets of reality and co creation that are coming online that are going to actually be the answer to that pain point. And I hope I was able to explain it properly. But another way that I would say this is quite directly for those of us who have really accelerated in our own evolvement, it may feel like an encumberment to still be in this body and in this reality where limitations, like the one that you just described, still exist. And it's boring. And we may be really, really done with it or burnt out by it. But reality is also expanding beyond all of those limitations to actually give us room to expand into it. And I know that I don't really have time to get into this, but we're actually now connecting with other civilizations that are in octaves on this planet. So, for example, the Lemurians. There are Lemurian civilizations, such as the people of Telos in underneath Mount Shasta, the Mayans, and I've also discovered a civilization of people that live underwater in Hawaii, but in an octave of frequency higher. So, in other words, if we dive down there, we're not going to see them, but they are there. And we're able to actually connect with our ancestors in these higher dimensional radio signals, you could say. And as we do this, a new part of what gives us purpose is being fueled, and it's so much more expansive. So that's one of the things that's also becoming available to us. But there's a pause point in the middle where it may feel like just being in the human experience is too encumbering. And
Mm,
that's normal for lots of people to experience that as well as the burnout of having to participate in the old system, which they know is false and they know is going away. And it is.
right,
Yeah.
right. So let's talk about the Lemurian and the octaves and how you can go to a place and unless you're in that octave, they won't be there. Like when people say they've seen the aliens because their frequency, either the aliens have come down into the frequency so the human could see them or the reverse, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, it's like when I am listening to you talk about that, I'm thinking the people that chose you and I, as an example, because we're sitting here together, we chose this time, this timeline right now on this planet to come from whatever civilization, if we came from Lemuria, for example, and I have
Mm-hmm.
had many people say I'm from there. I have my Lemurian crystal that I got in Sedona that I was drawn
Mm-hmm.
to. So in my vision, when you're talking about that, I'm visualizing there's an aspect of my soul from Lemuria that came to this earth now in Ashley and is here to in, raise the octave to get the people that live in this planet to the next, I don't know,
Octave.
dimension, octave,
Mm-hmm.
activation,
Yeah.
activate them, all the words you use.
Yep. Great. Well, first of all, um, it's not necessarily going to be everybody. So we're not waiting for everybody to be on board with this.
Right,
And I say that because anyone who is listening to that is already in that frequency. So whoever's hearing this, this doesn't apply to. But what I'd like to say to them is we're not waiting for the other people in denser vibrations to be where we're at to get ready to fly. And what I mean by fly is create and access all of the other gifts that we have coming online. We'll be able to access them even if there are people who are still taking a journey in lower density. And it's just a journey in lower
right,
density. It's not a judgment or anything like that. So don't be discouraged that you're waiting for the other people, quote unquote, that appear in lower density, quote unquote, that don't seem to be making any movement. And you think, oh my gosh, we're never going to get to the point where we're going to be levitating. Oh, no, no, you will. And you're not waiting for other people. And I feel compelled to say that before I go to the rest. So, interesting enough, one of the things that I've discovered in this connection that I have with this underwater civilization off the coast of Hawaii that come from Lemuria is that we often call Lemuria something that happened in the past or that we lost. Now, interesting enough, when I teach angel communication, the first module of my angel communication class has to do with basically tuning in the angels through frequency. So even just communicating with your guides, your deceased loved ones, your angels, you're already doing that where you're stepping up in frequency. And just to use this in the simplest terms, we all know what it's like to use an FM radio. So if I go to 102.7, I'm going to listen to Kiss FM. If I go to 104.3, or at least in LA, I'm going to listen to whatever that is, K-Big or something like that. And I know that if they're both going to be streaming at the same time, but I'm only going to be in tune with the one whose frequency, and FM stands for frequency modulation. Um, I'm going to be in tune with it based on how I tuned in and what frequency I'm allowing in. And we're able to do that already. Well, what's great here again, we've been spending an immense amount of time for uh, decades now, having an expanded capacity to communicate with the other side, which we've actually raised our frequency to be able to do. And now we're in the same bandwidth where we can contact or be in contact with these other people. Well, it turns out they are our ancestors. So there are many of us who are here, and this is like getting the walkie-talkie up and running so that we're getting commands, or we're getting guidance from base command. And this, for example, this band of frequency that have come up with now, we say, for example, that Atlantis and Lemuria is lost, but this civilization indicates that it's not, that when the earth descended in a lower density, that they ascended into a higher density, because we talk about these civilizations as if they were lost. And we've made up these
Yes.
very interesting stories
Light
about,
bulb.
yeah,
Yes, thank you. Continue. But that was the first
yeah,
time I understand it. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So, and that there's nobody alive today that can say, I was there when Atlantis fell or when Lemuria fell. All of this is something that's been passed on. And even the stuff about Atlantis and Lemuria, it's not even in our quote unquote history books. So we're taking sort of like fringe, um, whatever, some story that's even outside of the fringe of the mainstream narrative. And I'm not even saying the mainstream narrative is right either, right? But we have this sort of thing that has to explain that in order to have lost something, that it had to have, basically decayed or
Right.
something of that nature. And what I've come to realize or accept, regardless if that's the common narrative, is that what would have happened is that with this frequency variation of the planet that's in the process of coming back into unity with its um, higher dimensional mate or place that already belongs, is that we would actually be connecting with these areas that exist still on our planet, but at an octave or maybe a couple octaves or 3 octaves above. But we can, like people who connect with the extra dimensionals and extraterrestrials, we can and do modulate our own frequency to be able to do that. And it's in the heart, it's love. And consequently, you may actually have been experiencing lately, as I have, moments where I'm just crying tears of joy. And again, crying tears of joy. All of a sudden, for no reason, you're in pure ecstasy. I don't know
Mhm.
if you've been experiencing
Oh,
that
a
lately.
million percent. And Seph, we're coming to the end, but you just had my head emoji blow off because I realize, yes, I come into this place, this love that I can't explain. Like I know I'm connected to everyone. I know that their kids are my
Yeah.
kids. I know that they're part of me, and I can't explain the feeling, right? Like I get to this place. And but how you explained, so this is what I just got from you. And I'm saying this because this is what you taught me just now. and what it resonate. Maybe I'm remembering this. So when you explained how the octaves and Lemuria and Atlantis have gone away, like they talk about, oh, and the old when they disappeared, they, whatever. No, it's because human that we went down to this octave that still exists. There's no time. So it's as soon as we get to this elevation of this octave, we'll be with Lemuria and Atlantis,
Yes. Well, and
right?
here's the other thing. Yes, absolutely. And we're also in unity with Lemuria, the Mayans, the Telosians, the the Atlanteans, and all of those because they didn't go anywhere. They are
Right.
still in a frequency band, right? Of which there is many. Now, interestingly speaking, when we talk about our own ascension here, now it may very well be that when we go up that octave, so to speak, we may disappear to some of the people that are around us that are in the lower densities. And maybe in their variation of reality, we die or something like that. No big deal. And we also are able to replicate. So there's different versions of ourself that is a non-conscious player that's still playing out a role there as well. But we may very well encounter a narrative, and maybe that narrative was that Lemuria or Atlantis, they fought each other and then they ended up, you know,
Yes.
destroying each other. And maybe that was what had to play out in order for us to separate from frequency. But I can tell you that Lemuria still exists, like the people that are from there, whether they're in Talos or other places around the world, they exist right now because there is no time anyway, but they exist and they're available to us in a channel that we're able to access,
On the radio station.
so to speak. Yeah.
Oh, see, Seph, isn't this fun? Like, no preparation, just get on and talk. And I think
Yeah.
it's so fun. It's like, it's just when I was getting ready to turn on Zoom and I thought, I'm used to like, going down the rabbit hole and, doing my research. But I'm like, I already know him. Let's just bring part two on. Let's hear where he's come from the last time. And it's just, oh, it's so fun. And I've learned, you just taught me so much. Okay, so let's talk about your retreat coming up in Sedona. Let's talk about
Yes.
that and then we'll end and give everybody
Yes.
all the deets in the show notes
Great.
and everything.
Yeah, we're going to do this again. And this is a guided and curated experience just like that. It is going to be over the solstice in Sedona, and that's going to be Thursday, the 19th through the 21st. There's an additional activity on Wednesday, which is a really amazing one. It's an art therapy where we actually connect with our higher self and let it take the brush on canvas. There's an
Oh, fun.
optional aspect to add that on. But this has all been curated. We're going to have drum circles on the rocks. We do activations on the rocks with energy, life force energy. People call it Reiki, whatever you want. I have an energy healer that takes people out on the rocks where they have a very profound experience in the vortexes. We've got an angelic crystal bowl healer, a very angelic breathwork coach. And that event for many was life changing for people who attended. But that will be that weekend of June. And it's going to be the same thing, very amazing community of people. And the love that you experience there will take your life to the next level of
Right.
creativity. Yeah.
Wow, so fun. That just sounds beautiful. And just even knowing the experience people have being in a space like that with other people, the connections and the love and the vibration that it takes you up. I mean, it just can't you can't help but bring your vibration and your frequency up. And I mean, that's really where the magic is. And I feel like that's going to be part of our life,
Yeah.
and more in this new octave that we're living in all the
Yeah.
time. And it's going
Yeah.
to be amazing. So,
Yeah.
and I love that you're one of the people that have the message and have taken the lead and bringing these people together. It's amazing.
I honestly feel like I won the lottery getting assigned this. Like watching this and watching the people who are introducing to each other and the people who I get to connect the dots with. For some reason, I get the opportunity to get guided, to create a lot of connections. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
How did I get lucky enough to get this assignment here?
Yeah.
Because watching it is just absolutely, there's no word for it. It's just
Right.
profound. And the tears of joy, the deep, deep ecstasy that you feel just watching that you got this assignment from above to create so much magic for so many people, because the magic that people get out of these is so next level.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I love
Yeah.
it. We'll have
Thank
all
you.
the information in the show notes. Is there anywhere else I could find you, or do you want to share ways to
Yeah.
get in contact with you?
Go to quantumangelmagic.com. And there I actually have a meditation that is free, and it is an angel embedded theta brainwave meditation that uses the three magic words meditation modernized. It's an hour-long meditation, and it's designed to bring the angels to you personally
Oh,
so that you can co-create your new reality. And so you go to quantumangelmagic.com for that. And
okay.
there's a
Got
link
it.
to the retreats there as well, too.
All right. Oh, thank you, Seph.
Thank you
Every
very
time I
much.
meet you, I feel the magic, so I
Me
appreciate
too, for
that.
you. Thank you. And wishing magic to the audience as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Thank you.